Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Wishing you all a day filled with love and those heart-stopping moments. But right now, buckle up, because we're about to dive into a breathtaking emotional roller coaster with Diem and Toan. Headline: Hook, the shocking truth. Toan never actually left the country. Why would a powerful CEO turn into an anonymous laborer in a poor neighborhood? Diem is screaming in desperation as her gut tells her a disaster is looming. Is this redemption or the start of a tragedy with no way out? And more importantly, what is the real truth behind this mess? Don't take your eyes off the screen. The secret is coming up next. Is everything finally coming to an end? Or is this just the start of a whole new downward spiral? What's your take on Toan's choice to go off the grid and the overlap between the broadcast channels? Leave your wildest theories in the comments below. I'll be reading and jumping in the mix with you. And don't forget, share this video, and subscribe right now, so you don't miss a single shocking twist. The darkness in Diem's room wasn't just a lack of light. It felt like a living thing, thick and suffocating, slowly closing in around her chest. The clock on the wall ticked away. Every beat felt like a hammer striking her raw nerves. Diem sat there surrounded by the shattered pieces of her trust. Her logic told her to be patient, but her instinct, that primal part of her, was screaming. It was a silent scream, a jolt of electricity running down her spine, and a cold numbness in her fingertips. Something's wrong. Something is very wrong. She closed her eyes, trying to picture Toan's face. But strangely, his image kept fading, replaced by a void. The air around her seemed to thicken. Every breath felt heavy, like she was inhaling molten lead. It felt as if the universe was tilting, and she was the only one who realized a disaster was taking shape in the dark. What if he got into an accident? What if he was kidnapped, or worse? What if he's gone? The what-ifs drilled into her mind, fueling the fire of anxiety burning through her soul. Diem's composure began to crumble. She stared at her silent phone, feeling like time was no longer measured in minutes, but in the frantic thumping of her heart. Just as Diem was gathering the last scraps of her strength to keep from collapsing, a piercing sound rang out. Ring! Ring! Her father's phone. Mr. Thu, a former detective, vibrated violently on the wooden table. The sound was sharp, tearing through the gloomy atmosphere. Diem held her breath. She watched her father's face turn pale. The old veteran's sharp eyes narrowed, and the wrinkles on his forehead deepened under the dim, flickering light. On the other end of the line was one of his old colleagues from the police department. The man's voice was low and gravelly, carrying the cold, clinical tone of a forensic report. Thu, we just double-checked the immigration records. Toan never stepped foot on that plane. He never left the country. The words dropped like a bomb. Time stood still. Diem's ears started ringing. He didn't go. He didn't abandon me. For a split second, a faint spark of relief flickered. Toan hadn't run away. He hadn't left her behind to face the storm alone, despite what Huyen, that toxic woman, had been drilling into her head. All of Huyen's snide comments about a cheating, heartless man suddenly meant nothing. But that relief lasted only a few seconds before a new wave of agony and horror crashed down on her. If Toan didn't leave, then where was he? Why would a man who loved her more than life itself stay so terrifyingly silent? Why no calls, no texts? Why didn't he show up at her doorstep in the pouring rain to tell her everything was okay? This new truth was actually worse than being abandoned. It confirmed a fear she didn't want to put into words. Something was stopping him. This silence wasn't a choice. It was forced. Diem bolted upright. Her legs were shaking, but her eyes turned stone cold. She looked at her father, and Mr. Thu looked back with a gaze that showed he realized the deadly truth too. The instinct of a woman in love and the intuition of a veteran cop met at a single point. Toan was in extreme danger. Now every passing second wasn't just time, it was his chance of survival. The darkness outside the window was no longer just a quiet night. It was a hiding place for villains and the conspiracies that had swallowed Toan whole. She couldn't wait any longer. If the world wanted to hide him, she would tear through the darkness to find him. Her heart wasn't beating out of anxiety anymore. It was beating with a vow. Whether you're in heaven or hell, I will find you. The small living room suddenly felt vast and alien. Mr. Thu was still holding the phone, his hand trembling slightly, a rare sight for a man who had spent his life hunting criminals. The overhead light flickered with an annoying buzz, casting dancing shadows across the floor. Diem's throat felt bone dry. She wanted to scream, to demand answers, but it felt like someone was choking her. Every theory that Huyen, her best friend, or was she a hidden enemy, had planted in her head over the last few days began to crumble. He's gone, Diem. When men face pressure, they run. He took that flight last night and wiped his tracks. Huyen's voice echoed in her head like a devil's taunt. But now, the truth from her father's colleague had slapped those lies right out of existence. Toan didn't leave. Toan was still here in this suffocating city. But why? How could a man whose every instinct was to protect Diem let her fall into this black hole of despair for the last 48 hours? Mr. Thu set the phone down on the table. The dry clack of plastic hitting wood sounded like a gun being cocked. He looked at his daughter, his aging eyes now flashing with the sharp intensity of a veteran investigator. Diem, listen to me. His voice was low, and every word carried weight. If he didn't leave the country, it means his plans were cut short right at the airport gates. Or even earlier than that. Diem collapsed onto the old sofa. Daddy never turns off his phone. He knows how much I worry. Unless he's physically unable to pick up a phone, Mr. Thu interrupted. A cop's bluntness can be brutal sometimes. He walked over to the window and pulled back the old curtain, looking down at the street blurred by yellow streetlights. A black car sat idling in the distance, its exhaust fading into the night mist. Mr. Thu's instincts went off. They were being watched. Toan's disappearance wasn't an accident. It was a link in a much bigger, more dangerous game, and his daughter had unknowingly become the central pawn. In her panic, Diem's mind began racing through the final details. Their last call was at 6:00 p.m. the day before yesterday. Diem, I'll be home soon. Don't wait up, I have a surprise for you. Toan's voice had sounded strange then. He didn't sound like someone about to run away. He sounded excited, but underneath that, there was a hint of urgency, a slight shortness of breath, like he was walking very fast. And the background noise, that was it. A train whistle. Toan wasn't anywhere near the airport. He was near the old East Station. Dad Diem bolted upright, her eyes wide. Toan didn't go to the airport. He lied to all of us about the flight schedule. When he called me, he was at the East Station. Why would he lie about going abroad? Mr. Thu turned back, his face hardening. He was creating a fake alibi to throw someone off. Toan is protecting something, or running from something absolutely terrifying. And whoever it is, they probably caught up to him. The atmosphere in the room shifted from heavy sadness to extreme tension. Diem grabbed her coat. She couldn't sit around waiting for the truth to knock on her door. The truth was out there somewhere in the dark alleys near the station, or in some basement where the light of justice never reaches. Diem, sit down. Mr. Thu barked quietly, but with total authority. Where do you think you're going? It's not your sunshine and rainbows world out there anymore. If Toan was stopped, then whoever did it is waiting for you to show your face too. But I can't just let him die alone. Diem screamed, the tears she'd been holding back finally breaking through. Every minute we spend arguing here is a minute of his life we're losing. You're a cop, Dad. You know the golden hour rule better than anyone. Mr. Thu went silent. He looked at his daughter, the spitting image of his late wife, strong and resilient. He sighed and reached into a locked drawer for an old, worn leather holster. Fine. But from this second on, you follow my orders exactly. We aren't going looking for Toan's family. We're going on a hunt. The apartment door closed with a cold click. Father and daughter stepped into the elevator. Diem's reflection in the dull stainless steel of the door showed a face that was pale, but her eyes burned with a fierce, relentless fire. She knew that after tonight, the Diem of yesterday was gone forever. Her innocence had died the moment that phone rang. In its place was a woman searching for the warmth of love within the chilling reality of betrayal and danger. Down in the apartment parking lot, the black car's engine hummed silently. As Mr. Thu's car sped onto the main road, the black car slowly began to roll, tailing them like a shadow that couldn't be shaken. The countdown had begun, and it wasn't just a countdown to find Toan, it was a countdown for their very lives. Back in the suffocating living room, time seemed to freeze after the officer's confirmation. Mr. Thu and his mother, Diem's grandmother, rushed to her side like two final life rafts in a stormy sea. Diem calmed down. "Breathe, honey, look at me," her grandmother cried, gripping Diem's ice-cold hands, trying to pass some warmth from her own frail, wrinkled fingers. Standing behind her, Mr. Thu's broad shoulders shook as he struggled to keep it together. He knew, better than anyone with his daughter's medical history and fragile health, if she collapsed now, her heart would give out before the truth ever came to light. "Hold it together, Diem. You have to stay strong so we can go find him." Mr. Thu's voice rang out like an order, though it was laced with pain, but all the advice felt like white noise to her. Her fear was no longer just a feeling. It had turned into dark tentacles, crawling under her skin, tightening around her throat, and choking her every breath. She felt like she was in a free fall into a bottomless black hole where every memory of Toan became a knife twisting in her soul. Hundreds of miles away, in a poor, isolated village, far from the city's chaos, a man with no name was existing in an entirely different dimension. This was Toan, in total contrast to the storm tearing through Diem's soul. Toan was surrounded by an eerie, almost terrifying calmness. His memory was like a shattered mirror, every piece cloudy and gray. He didn't know who he was. He didn't know why his body was covered in strange scars. And weirdest of all, he felt no urge to find that past. The flashy name Toan, the CEO position, running a billion-dollar empire, the high-stakes board meetings. All of it had been wiped clean, replaced by pure survival instinct. Every day, the man who used to sign million-dollar contracts now used those same hands to scavenge through every corner of the poor neighborhood. He took any job he could find, hauling sacks, fixing roofs, or cleaning stables. With no ID and no degrees, he accepted under the table manual labor, taking cash on the spot to avoid any paperwork. It was a bitter irony. A genius business mind was now using its full capacity just to figure out how to help the poor old woman who had saved him put 3 meals on the table. As the sun set over the struggling farm, Toan returned in clothes stained with mud and sweat, but his eyes sparkled with a simple sense of pride. He opened his hand and gave the old woman a few crumpled bills, the hard-earned result of a long day's labor. The old woman looked at him, her eyes filled with pity and hesitation. She took the money, but didn't spend a cent. She quietly walked into the back room and tucked the cash into a rusty metal box hidden under her bed. "This money belongs to you," she whispered to herself. "I'll keep it safe for you, so that one day, when you finally remember where you truly belong, you'll have a little something to help you get back home." She knew this man didn't belong here. The poise hidden beneath his coarse fabric shirt and the clinical, systematic way he handled every task proved he was an eagle with clipped wings taking temporary shelter in a sparrow's nest. Just as the audience was holding its breath for a fated encounter following those clues at the police station, the plot of their lives hit a frustrating speed bump. Things started getting messy due to outside interference, specifically the uncontrolled spoilers leaking from Lie2Fan's channel. What should have been a seamless string of dramatic events was now stalled. The audience was beginning to find things predictable and boring. Diem's channel kept replaying old scenes and old heartaches instead of providing fresh updates to counter the rivals' sudden schedule changes. The overlap between the two channels was becoming a total disaster. This was supposed to be the moment Diem showed her. Strength rewrote the script of her life and cut out the redundant flashbacks to start taking decisive action. Diem stood up and wiped away her tears. She couldn't let herself become a rerun in her own life. Her fragile health and the doctor's warnings didn't matter anymore, not compared to finding the truth hidden behind the fog of the East Station and those unfamiliar streets. "Dad, I don't want to hear about where he went anymore," she said, her voice unusually steely. "I want to know where he is right now." If Lie2Fan's channel has already announced the result, then we're going to change the process. She understood that to find the man she loved, she had to step out of the comfort zone of being a victim. She had to find Toan, not the flashy CEO, but the man wandering aimlessly somewhere with an empty heart. The real game was just beginning. The atmosphere in the living room had barely settled after the emotional storm when Mr. Thu's phone vibrated again. This time, it wasn't a long ring, but an encrypted message with a set of GPS coordinates. Mr. Thu narrowed his eyes, his rough fingers swiping quickly across the screen. His expression shifted from worry to intense focus. The predatory instinct of a former criminal investigator had fully awakened. "Diem, look at this." He turned the screen toward her. It was a grainy photo from a security camera at a highway rest stop heading south over 300 km from the city. In the image was a tall, thin silhouette wearing a faded black jacket trudging through the early morning mist. Even though the photo was pixelated, Diem didn't need a second to recognize him. That slight leaned to the left when he walked the way he tucked his hands into his pockets. It was Toan. "He's alive," Diem whispered. Her tears stopped falling, hardening into a sharp glint in her eyes. "But why is he there?" "That's the way toward the old border region." Just then, Mr. Thu received another call from an inside source. The voice on the other end was a low whisper. "Be careful, Thu. There are people who don't want him found. Toan isn't just missing. He's a key that's gone rogue. And the hunters have already picked up the scent of the coordinates I just sent you." Diem gripped the steering wheel tight. This time, she had insisted on driving to stay sharp. She knew she was in a race where the prize was a life and the opponents were faceless shadows. The blend of characters from the veteran Mr. Thu and the wise grandmother to the mysterious Toan and the underground leaks from Tufan's channel created a suffocating web of suspense. Everything moved in sync because everyone played a part: the guide, the protector, and the keeper of secrets. Diem and Toan's story was no longer just a drama. It had become a real-time, interactive experience where every comment and theory from the audience acted as the lifeblood keeping the narrative alive. What about you? When you saw that blurry photo of Toan at the rest stop, what went through your mind? Is he running to protect Diem? Or is he actually being brainwashed by some shadowy force for a darker purpose? Mr. Thu's pickup truck tore through the night, its headlights slicing through the thick fog like two blades of light. Behind the wheel, Diem's knuckles were white from gripping the steering wheel so hard. She didn't feel tired or sleepy. She was running on a volatile mix of desperation and final hope. Mr. Thu sat in the passenger seat, his hand resting casually on the holster hidden beneath his jacket. He kept checking the rearview mirror. "Do you see that gray truck behind us?" Mr. Thu asked, his voice low and raspy. Diem glanced at the mirror. About 3 car lengths back, a pair of dim headlights trailed them steadily, never overtaking, never falling back. It was like a predator patiently waiting for its prey to tire out. "They've been on us since we left the outskirts." Diem replied, her voice trembling but determined. "Dad, who are they? Why are they so obsessed with Toan?" Mr. Thu stayed silent for a long moment, the roar of the engine the only sound filling the cabin. Finally, he sighed. "Toan isn't just a CEO. Before he met you, he accidentally got his hands on a list of debts owed by some very powerful people that can't be paid back with money. I've suspected this for a while, but it wasn't until I got that message from my old colleague that I knew for sure They're hunting Toan for what he knows, not for who he is. At 2:00 a.m., they pulled into the rest stop where the photo had been taken. It was a rundown string of buildings with flickering neon lights, sitting isolated in the middle of the wilderness. Diem stepped out of the truck, the biting highland air hitting her lungs and making her shiver. She pulled out her phone, opened the photo of Toan, and walked toward the only grocery stand still open. "Excuse me, have you seen this man?" she asked the groggy shopkeeper. The man squinted at the screen, then gave Diem a strange look. "That guy, yeah, I saw him. He sat in that corner for 2 hours, ordered a black coffee, no sugar, but never took a sip. He just kept staring at an old photo in his wallet, then asked me for directions to the old train station." Diem's heart tightened. An old photo, was it, of her? His memory wasn't completely gone. It was just locked behind a door he hadn't found the key to yet. But the shopkeeper lowered his voice. 2 men in black came by, asking about him just a little while ago. They didn't look like they were looking for family. They looked more like hunters. Just as Diem was about to ask more, a loud crash echoed from the parking lot. Mr. Thu had already slipped outside. Under the flickering streetlights, he stood his ground against 2 strangers stepping out of the gray truck that had been tailing them. One swung a tire iron, while the other brandished a taser. "Thu, you're an old man. Hand over the phone and go back to the city to drink your tea." One of them barked, his voice as cold as clashing metal. Mr. Thu stood tall, his shadow stretching across the pavement like a mountain. "You forgot who I used to be in this province. Nobody tells me to leave until I've found what I came for." Tucking herself behind the shop door, Diem's breath caught in her throat. She wanted to rush out, but knew she'd only get in her father's way. She pulled out her phone hit record and started filming, desperate to capture every detail. This was the content her channel needed, living proof of the danger Toan was in. The fight was swift and brutal. Despite his age, Mr. Thu's special ops training was still razor sharp. But the numbers weren't on his side. As the man with the tire iron lunged, Diem couldn't sit still any longer. She grabbed a fire extinguisher by the door, pulled the pin, and charged out. A cloud of white chemical powder engulfed the attackers. "Dad, get in the car now!" she screamed. As their truck tore away, leaving the rest stop behind in a haze of smoke, Diem's phone buzzed with a notification. Toan had just posted a short video. With trembling hands, she opened the clip. It was old security footage from the East Station on the very night Toan disappeared. In the video, Toan was talking to a woman whose face was hidden by a hood. She handed him a wallet, the exact same one the shopkeeper had just mentioned. And when the woman turned her head for a split second before the clip cut to black, Diem nearly dropped her phone. It was Huyen. "Dad," Diem gasped. "Huyen didn't just lie to me about Toan running away. She was the last person to see him before he lost his memory. She's the one who walked him into this trap." The crossover between the 2 channels had reached a fever pitch. Diem's channel was providing raw live footage of the chase, while Toan's channel had just delivered the fatal blow, the truth about her best friend's betrayal. The puzzle pieces were finally clicking into place, but the picture they formed was terrifying. Toan didn't just lose his memory by accident. He had been drugged or psychologically broken by Huyen and her crew to get to that list. Now Toan was wandering the old train station, oblivious to the fact that both his loved ones and his enemies were closing in on him.